On Friday, the Texas State Senate Committee on Redistricting held a hearing to discuss proposals for new congressional and state Board of Education district lines. The panel heard testimony from business and community leaders, along with members of the State Board of Education. The 70-minute hearing was chaired by Senator Jeff Wentworth.
Senate Committee on Redistricting will come to order. We don't have a quorum. I guess we'll let you call the roll anyway, though. Clerk will call the roll.
Chairman Wentworth.
Here.
Vice Chairman Jackson. Senator Armbruster. Senator Kane. Senator Duncan. Senator Ellis. Senator Shapiro. Senator Zafrani.
Since we're lacking a quorum, we won't take a motion on the minutes. We'll wait for a quorum to take that motion. Members, Senate Bill 500 and Senate Bill 501 are the Congressional and State Board of Education shell bills, which were introduced earlier this session. They'll eventually be replaced by the plans the committee decides to adopt. While committee members have been working on those plans, we really don't have a statewide plan for either of those that we're going to lay out as the proposed committee plan today. We held a joint meeting with the House Committee on Redistricting back the first week in April, and we heard testimony about Congressional and State Board of Education district lines at that time from people from all across the state. Since that time, we've focused most of our attention candidly on Senate district lines because we have a deadline of May 28th to get a Senate plan and a House of Representatives plan out. But we've continued to get letters and phone calls and faxes from people that did have an interest in where the Congressional and Board of Education line should be. So today's meeting is going to serve as another opportunity for us to talk about those lines. This is Wednesday the 9th, and under the rules, on Friday the 11th, day after tomorrow, is the last day the committees can report bills out of committee to the floor of the Senate. So let's take, if we could, we've got maps here on easels behind me of both Senate bill, both the current boundary lines for Congress and the current boundary lines for the State Board of Education. Yes, ma'am. For those people who want to testify this afternoon, we've got witness cards that we'd like you to fill out back there at the desk on the floor of the Senate, and if you'd bring those up to the clerk who's sitting to my left, we'd be glad to have you testify. Do we have witnesses?
He's not here right now. He's registering at the House. Looks like Robert's registering one other person.
Okay. Mr. Bill Owens, if you'd care to come forward, Mr. Owens. Faithful witnesses. I think it's 3. I think this is. Oh yeah, I'm confident. You'd identify yourself and who you represent, please, sir, and proceed with your testimony.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Bill Owens. I am here to testify for myself as an ordinary citizen, and I would like to comment on the Congressional Redistricting Plan. What I would like to do today is to present to you again the plan that I did present to you along with the House committee at the joint session you referred to back on April the 5th. Today, I would like to look at one aspect of my plan. I would like to look at one aspect of my plan, and that is in relationship to the fourth equity of redistricting, as I call it, and this one is political equity. As you may recall, I believe that there's four equities of fair redistricting: the population equity, communities equity, racial and ethnic equity, and political equity, as I discussed earlier in that April 5th hearing. What I would like to do today is to discuss my concept of political equity, propose a quantitative means of measuring political equity of various redistricting plans, and then apply that methodology to comparing my plan against the current congressional districts on the basis of political equity. Now, I did give you a handout outlining my remarks today. Before I get into the details of my analysis, I would like to stress my belief that I really hope that everybody can try to reach agreement about what fairness means in redistricting and how you can apply principles of fairness in various plans. I realize that my perspective is not the only one, but I am presenting it in the hopes of spurring a dialogue among all interested parties to try to reach common ground with a view of trying to reach agreement. The alternative, going down the litigation route with its accompanying bitterness and waste of millions of taxpayers' dollars, which we've done time and time again, needs not be repeated. And I urge you all as much as possible to try to do that. In accordance with that, I would be happy to exchange any plans that I have and drafts and comments with anybody who wants them. And I would encourage others who feel I have any useful input to do the same. I believe all parties need to be represented, get inputs to achieve the goals. Before I get into the details of analyzing the two plans, I would stress that when I drew up my plan, I did not consider partisan balance or the political aspects. It was drawn strictly on communities of interest and the other three equities of redistricting, the population balance and the racial ethnic. However, I do feel it's surprising with the results that came out. Now, the fourth equity of fair redistricting, political equity, has three components, in my view. One, of course, is balance between political parties and ideologies, the traditional avoidance of political gerrymandering. In addition, I believe a plan should be fairly balanced between incumbents and potential challengers, not rigged to get preordained results. And finally, I think it's desirable to maximize the number of competitive districts. Now, let's look at the two plans. My plan is the map that's on this board before you right now. And if you looked at with this methodology that I'll propose, which is explained in detail in Appendix 1 in my handout, it is an attempt to predict the character of the districts It is an attempt to predict the character of the districts on the assumption that the political parties are evenly balanced on a statewide basis. And this is basically done with comparing the results of close elections statewide, district by district, and then seeing to what extent the district deviates from the statewide average. Districts that deviate substantially, that is more than 5 percentage points in the direction of either political party, are classified with that party. districts that were within 5% of the statewide average are considered swing districts, and those that deviate between 1 and 5% are considered as leaning to the relevant political party. Those that are within 1% of the state average are deemed to be pure swing districts. Now, with that as the framework, and applying those standards to my plan, you wind up with 14 Democratic seats and 12 Republican seats, again, as under the assumption that the parties are evenly balanced on a statewide basis. To the extent that is not true, these configurations could change. That leaves 6 swing districts, of which 4 are leaning to the Republican side, and 1 is leaning to the Democratic side, and 1 is a pure swing district. In my handout, I identified very specifically which of the districts fall into each of the relevant categories.
Mr. Owens, could I ask you, do you know, have you checked to see whether or not you pair incumbent congressmen in this first plan that you're discussing?
Yes, I did not do that at the time I drafted the plan. I have looked at that on an after-the-fact basis. And yes, there are some incumbents that are paired. I'm going to get into that in the incumbent-challenger balance issue, which is the next one. But there are a number of pairings. It is my judgment.
How many are there?
Offhand, and now this is a guess. I don't have, well, maybe I can, if you just bear with me, I may have that handout with me. I can give you an off-the-cuff. It's roughly in the order of magnitude, I think, about maybe 3 or 4 pairings, which would be about 6 or 8 congressmen. Now, there are several that I'm aware of that come off the top of my head. I may perhaps have the formal report in with me here. If that's of great significance, I would be happy to quickly check my briefcase and see if it's here, and I can give you more detail if that's relevant. I can give you off the cuff for some of the stuff, if that's whatever you would like. If you'd like, I'll quickly check and see if I have it right here.
That'd be fine.
I can't tell you offhand if I exactly have that, but I'll see what I can do.
Mark Senator Ellis present and Senator Armbruster, please.
Yes, sir, I do have that here. Let me tell you what it shows. Now, I want to stress that when I drew the plan, I did not look where any of these folks live, so this analysis is totally after the fact.
Okay, good. Where will you be? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have the report here. The first district that involves a pairing is district, well, excuse me, do you just want me to give you the overview or give you the district-by-district analysis, Mr. Chairman?
Well, just the district numbers would be...
Okay, sure. No problem. It's not that many, believe it or not. The first one is district number 4. These are my districts now on my plan, which is roughly in Collin County-based district in the northern eastern suburbs of the Metroplex. District number 4 pairs Hall and Johnson, who are currently in districts number 3 and 4. I do note that the northern border of my District 3, which does impinge into Collin County, which is the residence of both of these folks, is relatively close to, I think, Representative Johnson, Congressman Johnson's home. So it's possible by some tweaking that problem, to the extent you all believe it's a problem, could be solved. The next one is District number 18. And this is a pairing of Ken Benson with Sheila Jackson Lee. District 18 is in the south-central part of Harris County with a little bit of Fort Bend, which is the ethnic African-American district in my configuration. That pairs both of those incumbents.
So that's District 18?
18 on mine, and it's in south-central Harris County. I can point it out on the map for folks that are relevant. It's this one right here. And you can see over here it's the south. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. It's the south central part of Harris County, and there's a little bit, mostly the city of Houston, in Fort Bend County, and it's the ethnic African American district built on that community. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, where does it go? Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry. Now, on that one, my own opinion is that in the interest of fair redistricting, that would be a difficult one to solve, because I have created a second African American district in north central Harris County, and I believe to create that second African American district in north central Bexar County, to attempt to jiggle the lines around to avoid pairing those incumbents in order to satisfy the Voting Rights Act. This is getting into racial ethnic equity, which I hope to talk at a little meeting, but since this subject is before us, I want to give you a little of the rationale. That, in my judgment, to be able to create both of those African American districts in Harris County, you would have to have awful squirrely lines to attempt to separate those incumbents, and that might run afoul of the Shaw v. Reno issues. So that may be, at least in my judgment, a rather, to the extent it's considered a problem, a difficult problem to solve, if you would like to see about the possibility of creating that additional African American district in north central Harris County. The next pairing is in District 22 in my plan's configuration. And, excuse me, the way the report came out, I'm getting ahead of myself. It broke in the middle of the page. The next, I stand corrected, the next pairing is in District 21 in my configuration, and that is the North Central Bexar County and the Hill Country District in my configuration. Which on the map here, you can see here's the Bexar County, and you can see it over here, the Hill Country portion. Now, this one involves a pairing of Representative Smith with Congressman Bonilla. And I don't know if that one can be solved or not. What I was attempting to do on that one was to have District number 23.
Mr. Owens, if I could interrupt you for just a minute. I just noticed that at least you're an equal opportunity pairer, because in Harris County you proposed to pair Congressman Benson and Congresswoman Lee, who are both Democrats. You proposed to pair Congressman Bonilla and Congressman Smith in Bexar County, who are both Republicans. And in Dallas County you proposed to pair Congressman Hall, who's a Democrat, against Congressman Johnson, who's a Republican.
Yes.
So it's sort of 50-50 damage.
Well, yes. I mean, that's probably the way it works out, but in all candor, I did not know any of this stuff when I drew the map, and to the extent that it falls on equal sides of the line that's deemed to be desirable, that's a nice benefit. But I was just trying to follow the standards as I set forth, but your remarks and comments are quite correct in that regard.
1016 is the map number. It ought to be in your folder, I think. Do we have a map for her? 1016?
Don't have them anymore.
Oh, did you? This is the only one I think we got. You can continue,
Okay.
Mr. Owens.
Sure. Yes, and now to explain how that pairing arose, I felt it was appropriate to have District 23, which I consider the Laredo border district, which is this one right here on the map, and with a basic population base in Laredo should be centered on those border communities, which are a community of interest, instead of the current configuration for District 23, which is basically the same as mine, except it's got an appendage reaching into the north central and northwestern part of Bexar County, which are type of white-collar, heavily Anglo area, which is very little, in my judgment, demographically in common with the border areas, and therefore it should be adjusted accordingly. And to the extent the pairing is deemed an inappropriate result, I guess that's an unfortunate consequence.
Senator Zaffirini?
Could you explain to me what you perceive as the community of interest between, say, Webb, where Laredo is, and Pecos or Brewster or Presidio or Hudspeth or Culberson, any of those counties?
Those western counties that you refer to are in the Big Bend area. All of those counties are very heavily Hispanic counties. There is also, although the level of commerce is not as big, of course, as it is in Webb County and Laredo, which is where the Pan-American Highway goes, there are nevertheless a few border towns all along that area with some of the interaction between the border communities. Now, if you want to talk about the lack of community of interest in that district, I would suggest that instead of looking at those areas, you look up towards the northeastern salient of the district in the San Angelo area, which is, in fact, in that district. Now, that was, in my judgment, an unfortunate consequence and a compromise. I felt, however, in order to even out the population of that district, it was better to go into San Angelo than into the northern part of Bexar County, because at least all of San Angelo came into that district, and that area is kept whole as a community of interest within a larger district. That would not be the case with the current salient in Bexar County, which slices up the north side of Bexar County. Furthermore, I note that under the current congressional districts, that San Angelo area and the city itself, both county and city, are split between two districts. So I think that is an improvement. It is not perfect, but that was done to accommodate the new Hispanic-oriented seat in the Valley, District number 31. Those adjustments had to be made to create an additional Hispanic seat, and I'm sure, as you're aware, a lot of the groups have felt that most of the growth in the state has come from the Hispanics, and they ought to get a new seat. And so to accommodate that, that was one of the compromises, in my judgment, that needed to be made.
In developing this particular map, and since you brought up District 23, let's pursue that line of questioning if it's all right with you. Did you consult with any of the residents of that district, of Congressman Bonilla's district?
I did not consult with all of the, I didn't go out and take a field survey. What I did do, however, was to review the outreach hearings that did occur at various parts of that district. And in fact, I was at one of those outreach hearings myself in San Antonio last year.
And you're a resident of San Antonio?
I'm also a resident of the district. But that's, my part of it, as I said, is quite atypical, and my section of the district is atypical. However, at that San Antonio hearing, I did tell the folks, I made a presentation there as well, based on the Owens-Pate plan of 1990, which has a district, now District 23, which is very similar in the configuration of the new one. And at that hearing, there were numerous people who had been at that hearing from Eagle Pass and the Presidio area, in that area, who felt strongly that their area should not be connected to San Antonio, that they were a community of interest and did not have that. And number of those folks spoke privately to me after the hearing and shared those sentiments with me. I do not have their calling cards with me at this time, but to the extent you believe that is relevant, I will try to dig into my files and get that information for you.
When was the last time you visited Webb County?
It was a number of years ago. I have not been there recently.
You have not? And
No.
have you visited any of the other counties outside of Bear and Webb?
I have traveled through most of the territory in that district, and not in the last few years, but I have been through Webb County. I've been up to the Big Bend area. In fact, I have gone down to the border area at Big Bend, the little town of Ojinaga near the Boquillas Canyon in that area. So I'm not a total stranger. However, the last time I was through that territory was prior to the very great growth that has been experienced in the Laredo area that I've read about in the newspapers. And it would seem to me that, and of course you're from Laredo, and I'm sure you can speak much more eloquently on this subject than I could ever hope to, but the feeling that I kind of got, and just kind of reading the newspapers, was with that great growth there, perhaps there was a thought that maybe Laredo and that border area ought to have its own district. But, you know, I'd have to... You're close to the action there. That's your hometown. I'm sure you could speak volumes on the growth there in that subject.
Well, I could, and I also see a very strong community of interest between Webb County and Bear County.
But is there a strong community of interest between Webb County and the Anglo white-collar area in the northwest, a part of it, which, as I understand, Webb County is 95% plus Hispanic and also is somewhat blue-collar in its orientation?
Well, the community of interest is defined recently, but I won't debate you on that subject. My interest was in asking you a few questions, and I thank you for answering them as best you could. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
I always appreciate the dialogue.
Mr. Owens, we have a couple of other witnesses. I'd like you, if you could, to
I'm
wrap
okay.
it up.
Well,
you've had nearly 25 minutes of the committee's
no,
time this
I'm
afternoon.
sorry, sir.
That's okay.
I just no, but to quickly summarize the end of the answer to your original question about the pairings, which started this diversion. The other two pairings are in District 22, which is in southwest Harris County, Culberson and DeLay, and the last one is in District 30, which is the African American district in Dallas County, between Johnson and Frost. What you've talked about here pretty well covered the second point on the incumbent-challenger balance factor of the political equity. And finally, maximizing the competitive districts, I think that's always desirable. Let me quickly say how this compares to the current congressional districts. Using the same analysis, you find that the current congressional districts have 14 Democratic seats, only 9 Republicans. Of the 7 swing seats, 3 lean to the Democratic side, 1 leans to the Republican, and 3 are pure swing districts. That bottom line is much more tilted to the Democratic side, and this analysis, I think, shows a quantitative way of demonstrating that than the plan that I propose, which I believe is evenly balanced. On the incumbent-challenger balance, this one, as you all know, was done deliberately to help the incumbents last time, and to gerrymander, to do that in the process, so much so that they got themselves into trouble with all the litigation. We don't have to, and wasted the taxpayers' dollars. We don't have to get into that. And again, you could maybe improve it by increasing the number of competitive districts. The key point I would like to make is that the current congressional districts, in my judgment, are very heavily skewed to one side of the line and do not apply political equity fairly, and therefore should not be a starting point for any new congressional plan. I'd be happy to try to answer any other questions.
Are there additional questions for Mr. Owens? Thank you very much, Mr. Owens. We
Thank you.
appreciate your, I think, fourth appearance before the committee. Chair calls David Bradley. And Mr. Bernal as well. Okay, if you'd
By the
like,
luck of the draw, my name came up first, but Dr.
you bet.
Bernal.
If you'd like, if you'd both like to, do you have a third?
We have the technician of the plan.
I see,
for
a
the State
resource
Board,
witness.
Mr. O'Grady.
Okay. Yes, sir. All right, if you'd, if Mr. Bradley and Mr. Bernal would introduce yourselves, identify yourself and who you represent, and proceed with your testimony.
Senator, my name is David Bradley. I'm a member of the State Board of Education. I had not anticipated being here today, but am here in lieu of, or instead of, Geraldine Miller of Dallas. Ms. Miller has been very gracious and diligent as a senior member on the board to take the task of redistricting over. She has brought in the services of Mr. O'Grady. She has sat down with board members on a number of occasions in developing a board approved plan, and we'd like to present that to you all today.
We'd be glad to hear it.
I'm going to let Dr. Bernal give a presentation, but in essence, I wanted to also give you the support that has come from the board on this issue. And of the proposed plan, 13 of the 15 elected members have signed on to the plan. And as a point of reference, if we were in the Senate, that would be 26 out of 31, or in the House, 130 out of 150.
Chairman,
Senator Zaffarini.
who were the two who didn't sign on?
The current chair, Grace Shore, and our newest freshman, Dan Montgomery,
Thank
out
you.
of Fredericksburg.
Thank you.
Members, as Mr. Bradley stated, my name is Joe Bernal, and I'm Vice Chair of the State Board of Education. The effort has to be given credit for us to have developed the plan for the State Board to Tyncee Miller, who has been a member of the board for some 15 years, and she was able to make contact with Mr. O'Grady, who then developed the plan for us. And we went through a lot of discussions with our members, and we were looking for a 15-member unanimous support for the plan. So we worked at it as much as we could, and we have that type of plan. We met, Ms. Miller and Mr. O'Grady met with Alan Ware to see from the Legislative Council to see that we would be meeting some of the requirements of the plan in regards to the objectives, which we feel like the plan meets it, that it's fair, that it's compact, that it protects the communities of interest, and that it complies with state and federal laws. And just simply want to say to you that of the 13 of the 15 members that for sure have told us that they support the plan, we're saying that we would like to recommend it to you for your consideration. And I'll pass it on to Mr. O'Grady if you're ready to hear the technical aspects of the plan.
The documents that you've received are the package that is generally put out by the Legislative Council on plans. I requested their assistance this morning, and we ran all the plans for you. I know it's somewhat confusing. I'll ask for your forgiveness. I'm a mathematician by trade. I like numbers. A lot of folks don't. But hopefully those plans will explain it. And again, I would put myself, you know, at the request of the committee to work with you. I do believe we've got to start on a plan. I'm not sure it is a final plan. We still consider it a working plan. But I'd be glad to work with you.
Let me ask you if you could, the staff's asked if you could email this to the committee staff, we could then print it out automatically and run these figures ourselves.
Sir, I can do that. It is on the Red Apple system and the RedView system. Your office can print out every single report from the map. Yes, ma'am. It's on the Red Apple.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good.
But I can also email if you'd like for me to.
Okay. Are there other questions of any of the witnesses? Mr. Bradley, Mr. Bernal, or Mr. O'Grady?
I'd like to ask one of
Vice Chairman Jackson.
Have you made this presentation to the House committee as well?
I believe they are scheduled committee this afternoon upon adjournment, but we do anticipate.
Yours was scheduled at 1:30, and I think theirs was scheduled at 2.
So
We're trying to make both of them.
You plan to do both of them today?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Are there other questions of any of the three witnesses? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Appreciate your being here. You can if you want.
Very good.
The chair calls John Adams. Why do they keep coming in?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Nice to see you again.
Yes, sir.
Senator Zaffarini, good to see you also. My name is John Adams. I'm from Laredo, Texas. I'm the immediate past president of the Laredo Chamber of Commerce.
How do you feel about seeing me?
Pardon me?
How do you feel about seeing me?
Oh, fine, Senator.
You told him it was nice to see him. I didn't hear my name.
No, sir. I said, Mr. Chairman, and Senator Zaffarini happens to be my senator, so
Oh,
I wasn't trying to avoid you.
okay.
If you knew him, you would be.
And I'm the executive director of the Laredo Development Foundation. Probably in the last decade, it has been driven home to us very clearly that our representation on the border and having representation on the border, given the impact of what's happening in our region, is critical. The border is the fastest growing region, the Texas-Mexico border in the United States, or in this entire hemisphere. Laredo, as you know, is the #1 inland port in this hemisphere. We cross, at this moment right now, we have over 12,500 trucks in motion, and we'll cross 9,000 at the end of the day. The representation in Washington and how that individual is selected and from where they reside is very critical to us. We work very closely with our congressional representatives on the border, the Congressional Caucus on the entire border, and it is imperative, I feel, that we have that representation close to where this action is. Obviously, what's most interesting is we've tried to take this message upstream, because those that pack goods in Dallas, or even Mr. Gebhardt's district up in the Missouri area, they're dealing with goods and services that cross at the Port of Laredo. We cross 700 of the Fortune 1000 companies through the Port of Laredo. And it's the impact is rather incredible. We're adding 1,000 square feet of warehouse of built to suit, not spec, per month in Laredo. And as we grow and our numbers begin to increase and the impact of our trade is incredible. With the European agreement with Mexico, this trade is only going to increase. And we think it's imperative that, that as the selections are made on these districts, that a great deal of consideration is given to the fact that there be timely input from this region of the state of Texas going forward to Washington. I know that there's nothing drawn at this particular time, but we definitely wanted to go on record to express our concern and our definite interest in how important this is to the border and the state of Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Are there questions of the witness? If not, thank you for appearing before the committee again, Mr. Adams.
Thank you.
Appreciate your being here.
Thank you very much.
Chair calls Renee Gonzalez. Jonathan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Senators. My name is Rene Gonzalez. I am the chairman of an organization named Mi Laredo, which is a community-based organization, and we do a lot of programs in volunteerism, youth leadership, skills development, GED training, community volunteerism, and community involvement in different issues. And we are requesting that while you start working on these maps to think of, as Mr. Adams said, the border, but not only as a border international trade issue, but from a people issue, a geographic, as Senator Safrini said earlier to one of the individuals testified, there are community interests, but there are also competing and sometimes even conflicting interests, as we're seeing right now with an issue that we have that our Congressman Bonilla has been caught in the middle of because of the different issues that Laredo and San Antonio and the border cities all along the U.S.-Mexico border have with this issue. And so we're seeing that we do need some help because for Laredo and geographically, our MSA is not totally in the USA. So we have Nuevo Laredo and Laredo as sister cities, that what affects Laredo affects Nuevo Laredo, our sister city, and geographically we're talking about close to 1 million people altogether, that these trade issues and these other issues that affect us, be it health, education, others, they're very important to the livelihood and the consistency and the growth of our cities. So I'm just here to ask for your support in looking, when you're looking at creating these maps, that you give some awareness and some importance to the issues of the border, not as a competing sector, but as a assistant to the rest of the United States and the effects that are daily issues, how they affect the rest of the United States. Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Chairman.
Senator Zafrini.
Mr. Gonzalez, you heard the testimony of Mr. Owens, who's addressed this committee. I believe this was his 4th visit. And I asked him if he knew of any community of interest between Webb, where you live, and, say, counties such as Brewster, Pecos, Reeves, Hudspeth, Culberson, Jeff Davis, Presidio. Do you know of any community of interest?
No, ma'am, because if you ask someone in El Paso, they'll say sometimes with the amount of the big size of El Paso, they'll say, well, we don't have many community interests also. Our community interests are very much Eagle Pass, Del Rio. We have strong community interests with them because of the geographic and the trade and the constant movement that exists in our cities as we have seen them. But if we were to say community interest, I'm sad to say that in my travels, and I've traveled a lot through the border in a former life as a coordinator of the Texas Border Infrastructure Coalition, I never had the opportunity to visit with an individual from Hudspeth County or from Brewster. I look forward to meeting because, as you know, Texas is big and wide and has room for 8 other states inside. So sometimes we don't get to see everyone that we'd like to be a part of as Texans. But I couldn't, if you were to give me a pop quiz right now and say what do Laredo and Hudspeth County have in common, I'd fail that quiz.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there other questions of the witness? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Gonzalez. We appreciate you being here today. Chair calls Leonardo Olivares.
From Stark County.
Whose district is that in?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Leonardo Olivares. I'm the city manager for Rio Grande City in Starr County. And I've got 2 brief comments to make on congressional redistricting. Really, the first one, and I think you know where I'm coming from, is that we're supporting the creation of a congressional district in South Texas. You've heard numbers from both sides. There's been a lot of growth throughout the state. Really, the one point I'd like to make is that there has been growth in Austin, Houston, Dallas, also in the Valley and throughout the border. The difference that you have is that usually the metropolitan areas have the political clout to get their voice heard in Washington. We don't have that on the border and at the right level, and so an additional district would help those efforts. The second point I'd like to make is that we would like to have Starr County be kept in whatever congressional district is included and not divided. And those are my comments on congressional redistricting.
Thank you, Mr. Olivares. Are there questions of Mr. Olivares? If not, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you and the rest of the committee for helping us keep Senator Zaffarini in Starr County. Thank you.
Appreciate your being here, sir. Lauro Lopez. Is he a resource witness? I beg your pardon. No testimony on the plan.
Star. He's a council
Reuben
member.
Sines, City Alderman, no testimony on the plan. Keep Starr County in 1 congressional district. Leonel Lopez Jr., no testimony, keep Starr County in 1 congressional district. Morris Overstreet. Welcome, Judge. Glad to have you here. You'd identify yourself and who you represent, please, sir.
The chair and members of the committee, my name is Morris Overstreet. I'm a little new at this, but I'll do the best I can. I represent an organization called the Texas Coalition of Black Democrats. It's an organization of just under 1,000 members. We have members in all but 2 of the state senatorial districts. We met over the last couple of years and decided that we wanted to take a shot at the congressional redistricting since Texas gets 2 new members. We have drawn the 2 new districts, one in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the other in South Texas stretches out to West Texas. One of our primary emphasis in redrawing the congressional districts and getting into this business is to basically try to create a seat that had a population base that would be favorable for the election of another African American to Congress, increasing the numbers from 2 to 3. With that in mind, we focused on the 25th congressional district, taking population from 2 districts nearby, the 7th and the 22nd, which were overpopulated, to reconfigure the 25th to create a favorable environment that an African American could be elected to Congress. One of the unique features of our plan is we really try to draw this, even though we're a Democratic organization, with the mind of being fair. You know, what's best for Texas. There's not much deviation in our districts. The greatest deviation on the negative side is 265. The greatest on the positive side is 36. Using the Democratic index, looking at the past elections, we think that we have drawn a map that basically is 16 Democratic seats, 16 Republican seats. The Democratic districts are 11 really, really strong districts. A lot of them might be considered competitive. The plan creates 7 majority winnable Hispanic districts, the 15th, the 16th, the 20th, the 27th, 28th, and the 32nd. And 1 impact district, the 24th, which is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Districts 15, 16, 20, 27, and 28 are currently held by Hispanics. District 32 contains a majority of what is currently District 23 at this time, Congressman Bonilla. District 29, currently held by an Anglo-Democrat, was reconfigured to increase the Hispanic population to 63.8% from its current population of 60.9%. District 24 retains a majority of its current configuration, connecting the Hispanic population in Dallas County with minority populations in Tarrant County to create a 62.1% minority district. 39.5 Hispanic and 23% African American. I'll certainly will provide the committee with a copy of our map if the committee so desires. I'd also like to answer any questions that you might have.
We would be pleased to have a copy of your map, Judge. And if is it on the Red Apple? Is it
yes,
publicly
it is.
available?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
it's,
good.
It's available.
Are there questions of Judge Overstreet? Senator Zaffarini?
Judge, did you consider the growth in the Hispanic population as you drew your map?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And how did you deal with the growth in the Hispanic population?
Well, first of all, we created the 32nd Congressional District, we think is a newly created district. It is going to be a Democratic district, Democratic leaning. It also should be held by a Hispanic. Because, quite honestly, we focused a lot in the Houston area, what we did was we put more Hispanic voters in District 29. That was already a Hispanic district, but it's held by an Anglo, Gene Green. So we put more Hispanic voters in the 29th Congressional District in hopes that an Hispanic can run for Congress and win in the 29th District. That's one of the examples that we use to try to increase or be aware of and take into consideration the growth of Hispanic population in Texas. The other area, of course, is the 24th Congressional District in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, currently occupied by Martin Frost. There's an increase of Hispanic voters in that district to the point now that I think it's really an impact district.
As you studied the racial and ethnic population patterns and growth, did you at any time consider the possibility of a new Hispanic district?
Of?
A new Hispanic district.
Yes. And I think in drawing this map, I think we've taken that into consideration. I think it is quite possible for Hispanic to win the 29th Congressional District, which, in my opinion, now is an impact district. The 23rd Congressional District, currently held by Henry Bonilla, was drawn so that it still is a Republican district. It does not cover a lot of South Texas and West Texas, but it covers still a lot of Bexar County. It moves up toward the Travis County area, but it's still a Republican district, still winnable by Bonilla. And so the 32nd definitely would give the Hispanic population an opportunity for another member of Congress, and the 29th, as reconfigured, gives the Hispanic voters a real opportunity to add to their numbers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there other questions of Judge Overstreet?
I have one.
Senator Jackson.
Judge, I was looking at the map a moment ago, and I noticed in the southeast part of Harris County, the split there that takes them over to the Jefferson County, I guess, and Beaumont, all those areas. I was just wondering about communities of interest there. Do you see where...
You know which district we're talking about? Are we talking about...
in Harris County on the southeast side.
Correct.
From I-10, which you've got all these Harris County cities that would be not linked in Harris County anymore, but over with Beaumont and Port Arthur area.
I think that district at present covers a lot of that area also. That's Nick Lampson.
Well, Nick Lampson has Galveston County, and he has just a little bit of Harris County, I believe. But would that district be a Republican district or a Democrat district in the numbers you have on that?
I like to call it a competitive district. In my opinion, if a district is less than 55 either way, then in my opinion that's a competitive district. Let me look at the actual numbers for the 9th.
May I ask a follow-up?
Senator Zaffarini.
When you say 55, are you talking about the population or the voting age population?
Well, we're talking about the voting age population and looking at, election, data. That if you're that close, in my opinion, it's a competitive district. That means that it's going to be primarily decided by the candidate himself or herself, as opposed to just party label.
I just want to clarify that you meant voting age population.
Right. Yes,
Thank you.
And under your plan, where would you're going to pick up 2 new districts, or we are going to receive or have received 2 more districts? Where would they be?
The new districts are the 32nd, of course, in this area, and then the 31st Congressional District would be in this Dallas-Fort Worth area. This is the 31st. And this is the reconfigured 32nd.
23rd.
And the additional African-American district would be in Harris County, is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it an African-American district. And the reason I say that is because you don't have a majority of the voting age population in the district African-American. What we have tried to do, and what we did in our map, was we pulled from 2 congressional districts that were close by, adjoining districts, the 7th and the 22nd, and added voters to the 25th. The African-American population of the 25th, I believe, is still going to be somewhere in about the mid-30s. The Hispanic population is going to be fairly close also. So it's a competitive district, but it is not, it's not a district of majority African-Americans.
Okay. Well, I thought you'd said in your opening remarks that you were trying to create, that was the purpose of what you were trying to do, was create another African-American opportunity.
You know, I may be a little naive at this. I think that fairness should be a real factor in doing this. And what I said was we attempted to draw a district that created a favorable environment that a qualified African-American would stand a good chance of winning. It's still a Democratic district, but it is not majority African-American district. But there are enough African-American voters in there and Hispanic voters that it should remain Democratic, but an African-American could win it, a Hispanic could win it, or the incumbent could certainly win it.
Certainly, I understand. But that district would be in Harris County, is where, under your proposed map.
It's primarily in Harris County. It takes in a portion of Fort Bend County and Brazoria County.
Okay, and then one last question. How many incumbents are paired under your map there?
No incumbents are paired.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of Judge Overstreet? If not, thank you, sir, for appearing today. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
The chair would announce copies of letters that all members should have. One from Judy Strickland, who's a member of the State Board of Education from Plainview. Another from Richard Watson, a member of the State Board of Education from Gorman, Texas. A third from Tynesy Miller, a member of the State Board of Education from Dallas. And another from Dan McClong, who's a member from, it doesn't say where he's from, but he's apparently a member of the State Board of Education in District 9, all supporting the plan that Mr. Bernal and Mr. Bradley presented earlier in the meeting. Chair recognizes Senator Armbruster for discussing a plan that he and his staff have been working on for some time. No more signed up. Senator Armbruster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we sat in a chairman's meeting over a month ago and were discussing issues with Lieutenant Governor, and we, this time of a session, we began contemplating were there any issues outstanding that could result in a special session. And the Lieutenant Governor made mention of the fact that the Governor did intend, if we did not come up with a congressional plan, the high possibility of returning for a special session. It did get my attention. And we began creating a plan, knowing how the current redistricting staff has been doing yeoman's work and really overworked to work on our Senate plan. We want to try to relieve some of the pressure on them to also come up with a congressional as well as a State Board of Education plan. That caveated this one. This doesn't represent whatsoever any pride of authorship in the development, in the now submission, or in the future. It is a plan that we feel is a good starting point to work and discuss. The aspects of the plan, there are no incumbents that are paired. There are only 14 counties that are split. Of course, 6 have to be because of sheer size. There's a couple of other counties that traditionally have been split, such as Waller County has traditionally been split not only for the last 10 years, but the years preceding that. San Patricio County, in maintaining an incumbent's position on the Armed Services Board and inclusion of Homeport and San Patricio to ensure that the congressman from that part of the state, because of his inclusion on the Armed Services Committee, we still have that representation there of Homeport. There are 2 new districts formed, one in Harris County, one in Dallas County. The one in Dallas County trends Republican. The one in Harris County is a swing district. However, it is 59% minority. All of the incumbents would have had a chance when you apply the Hobby-Rylander race as we have utilized in our Senate plan. All of the incumbents come out essentially as they are today between the split of R's and D's, except you could probably guess there may be 10 to 11 safe R districts, 8 to 9 safe D districts, with the rest swing districts based on that one race, Rylander Hobby. The plan, of course, as any plan, is not a perfect plan, but we intend it to motivate dialogue and discussion. If I were an incumbent congressman, which, if you notice my area, I have drawn it so that I keep my incumbent, have no desire to run for Congress now or in the future. But if I were an incumbent, I would want to address whether communities of interest in this plan have been enhanced or disenfranchised in the discussion. And I'd want to look at communities of interest, especially in these minority districts, to ensure where those communities reside. And I think that's where the discussion on the plan ought to rest between those 2 groups. I can probably pretty much assure you the Republican members of Congress will say, well, it's too Democrat, but I can equally assure you that probably the Democratic members will say it's too Republican. It has a deviation of ranging from a minus 0.04, which is well below the 1%, to a high of 0.06, or 0.6, and minus 0.4. So it's well within the 1% deviation top to bottom.
Well, we thank you very much for the work that I know you and your staff have put in on this, because we've been talking about this, as you've already said, for several weeks. And do we have the data from Ledge Council?
Yes, it should be in the packet submitted.
Or do we have to print out that separate 2-page like we did this morning, or is that already here?
I'm not real sure.
Rylander, I think. It's not there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, I think Ledge Council has to.
ask Senator Armbruster a question.
Senator Zaffarini?
Senator Armbruster, did you mention in your comments how many incumbents lived in their districts?
Yes, all of them currently live in the districts as are configured. I may point out in the new district created by Harris County, Gene Green actually lives within a precinct of 2 of being right smack on the border to where he could decide to run in the new one, or he's currently in his basically his district that he has now. But with the manipulation of no more than 2 precincts, if he chose to run, say, in the new created district in Harris County, he could do so. But all of the incumbents do reside within their district, and there is no pairs.
How did you divide Bexar County? Into how many districts?
If you'll look there on the map, it would be the one in the bottom right-hand quadrant with Representative Smith there in the purplish. as far as within Bexar County, they're almost identical with what they currently have today. If you look at this map, you can see the dark lines, I believe, represent the current configuration. The shading represents the new, for what it looks like. Other than Mr. Representative Smith up there in 21, it adds just in Bexar County that one portion that's looks to be purple as opposed to 28, which it looks to be blue. There is a little bit of override from existing to new between the, I guess that's Representative Rodriguez district there, 20.
And this District 23 still goes into El Paso?
That's correct, El Paso County.
So the way that you have this would continue what we have now, that 4 residents of Bexar County would represent an area from part of El Paso, coming across Texas, north of Bexar, in fact, to include part of Travis, Burnett, and then come down into the valley.
That would be correct.
Star. So approximately a quarter of the area of the state of Texas.
Well, that's correct.
Did you pinpoint where they live, the members of Congress in Bexar County?
Let's see if we got that on any of these maps. We can certainly do that. We did that when we were working. I don't know what Ledge Council has given to us.
We can get that.
We can certainly get those exact home locations for you.
Thank you.
Other questions, Senator Armbruster?
Yeah, that's what we used to make sure that we wasn't bearing them.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Are there others in the chamber that like to testify for, against, or on any of these proposed maps that have been laid out and discussed for Congress, the State Board of Education? And because we've got State Senate and State House, those are eligible subjects as well. If not, the committee will meet again as a committee of the whole tomorrow morning at 9, I believe Lieutenant Governor mentioned, and then again on Friday afternoon. We need to take up the House Bill 150, the House Redistricting Plan, and we'll do that day after tomorrow afternoon. Probably, yes, they passed it yesterday, and it's been sent to the Senate. It'll be referred, I think, today, and then we'll hear it day after tomorrow. I'm not quite sure when we'll meet, probably 3 or 4 p.m. Friday afternoon, which is the last day to get bills out of committees. Is there any other business to come before the committee? We never did get a quorum here all at the same time. We've had a quorum here, but at different times of the meeting, so we still don't have a quorum to adopt the minutes. Is there any more business to come before the Senate Committee on Redistricting? If not, is there a motion to recess until Friday afternoon? Senator Zaffarini moves to stand in recess subject to the call of the chair, which will be Friday afternoon. Is there objection? Without objection, the committee stands in recess.